Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Christian Karcher.
And you're joining us today. It's December, right?
It is now December. The holiday season is kicking in. I was reminded by my wife there's less weekends before Christmas than usual because of how late Thanksgiving was. So you got to start buying your gifts.
Are you done?
No, not even close.
I can't believe it, but I'm like 95% done. Thank you to Amazon and all of the online shopping
the shipping to home, the shipping to the office.
The hardest thing is getting stuff shipped to the house and not having my wife open it before I get home to open it, because some of those gifts are for her.
Our hardest thing is trying to track all of the gifts and make sure that they all come in.
Oh, because you're in a condo, right?
In a condo, and so we're thinking, you got to make sure that we didn't miss any or none got stolen. So we've got to check them off a list and make sure that they all arrive. That's the plan.
It's a challenge, but we're getting there. And it's been very busy here at Freedman Financial. We've been working on all of our last-minute year-end challenges that are always in front of us as we work with clients. Now, these are not bad challenges. I'm not suggesting that at all, but it does get to be a challenging time and a busy time here, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we had Giving Tuesday this week, which is a big one, making charitable contributions, end of year, gifting appreciated stock, taking a look at those capital gain distributions that I know you and Marion have been talking about. So it's been busy here.
Yeah,
but
this has been a big year with capital gain distributions, considering the performance that we've seen in the stock market this year.
Absolutely. You know, there was a bit of a lull towards the end of last year, and then this calendar year, there's been some significant gains. And so we're seeing a lot of those distributions this year.
Yeah, we sure are. But, you know, oftentimes we play into playing this game of balancing capital gain distributions. That's that extra dividend that gets paid in December that's taxable to you if you have a non-retirement account. And sometimes if your account is at a loss, but if you were to get an extra capital gain distribution, a taxable one, it might make sense to sell out of the fund before taking the distribution. But we have a problem this year, don't we?
Yeah, most of those funds don't have losses in them. So we
which
compare.
Is a good thing, right?
Yeah, so what we end up doing is we compare and say, okay, what is the minimal gain that we can realize here? Is it selling? Is it just living with the capital gain distribution? And most importantly, calculating those numbers, trying to figure out what someone who has an investment account like that is going to realize in capital gains, and then communicating that so that they can prepare for tax time, end of year. Maybe they've got losses elsewhere. Maybe there are charitable contributions they want to make in order to offset some of those gains. So that's a lot of the work we've been doing.
Yeah, it is really important that you go back and look at your tax return. Oftentimes people forget that they may have a capital tax loss carry forward, which maybe they haven't used. But it may be an opportunity to take some gains so that you can utilize a loss that maybe you took a few years ago. Remember, 2022 was not a great year in the stock market. And many people have tax losses. Maybe they weren't able to use all of them and they were able to carry forward. It's one of the things that we do as financial advisors is we ask our clients to provide us with a copy of their tax return so that we can look at that to see if there are tax loss carry forwards, but also if there are other techniques and tools that we can apply to your upcoming taxes to help you save a little bit of money. It's a program that we call Holistiplan, and I know you've really gotten involved with Holistiplan this year with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can take those tax returns and analyze them, look at it, and find great planning opportunities. Like you said, the carry forward loss is one that a lot of people don't think about because, you know, if you're not doing your own taxes, you're not thinking about the carry forward loss. But what I always tell people is if you look at your tax form, the front page, that first page, that's kind of the summary of everything. If under the capital gains / losses line item, you see minus $3,000, that means that you've taken losses of $3,000. That is the maximum you can take in any 1 year. And so if you see that minus $3,000, it's very likely there are more losses that are then being carried forward to the next year.
You're absolutely right.
Which will offset future gains. And so that's when we can see that opportunity and say, okay, what will it actually look like in 2024 when we factor in not only your capital gains for this year, but what carry forwards you might have from previous years.
And one of the other tools that we get out of Holistiplan as well is especially for people that are in what I call the distribution mode. Maybe you're approaching retirement, you're in retirement, and you need to start taking money from various accounts to help supplement your income, of course. We don't have the kind of pensions that existed decades ago. We have Social Security in most cases, and then we have other assets from which we draw upon. Our 401k, our investment accounts, a bank account, an annuity, whatever it might be. But what many people don't realize is the implication of taking money from each of those accounts can have a different tax liability to them. And Holistiplan helps with that.
Absolutely. So Holistiplan gives us the ability to take a shot of what is this year's tax consequences. And we can look at it and say, if we realize an additional $20,000 of income from an IRA, how will that impact our tax rate? Or versus, taking money from maybe a taxable account where you've got some capital gains, how do those impact the number? And that's important because we can help you figure out how to minimize taxes today. But then we also have to think about big picture. It's not just about this year and minimizing taxes this year. It's about looking at your entire retirement and saying, okay, in 5, maybe 10 years, you're going to have to take required minimum distributions. How will that impact your future tax rate? And how can we level it out so that you have minimal taxes, not just this year, but minimal taxes over the course of your entire retirement plan?
Yeah, and so, a lot of times on these shows we talk about retirement and retirement planning and taking money from distributions. But I know, Christian, over the past year or two, you've been starting to see some of our younger clients. When I say younger, people in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, and you've been really doing a great job trying to provide them with advice on financial planning and strategies. But you and I were talking about some of the questions that are a little bit more difficult for them to answer about planning than it is for somebody who's approaching that retirement stage. Maybe you can bring our viewers up to date on that.
So people who are approaching retirement and in retirement have an idea of what they want to do in that retirement. They might already have grandkids. They know where they want to go in the winters. They know what they're basically trying to replicate. When you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're not sure how many more kids you're going to have, if you're going to have to buy a house, if you're going to have to move, all of these things are up in the air, let alone what your retirement 30 years from now looks like.
You're not thinking about that at 20 or 30 years old.
Right. And so as you're putting money into these retirement accounts, and you might say, I know I've got to handle that at some point, but I'm not worrying about it right now because I can't even conceptualize what retirement looks like. We kind of have to reframe it and say, okay, what is going to motivate you to be able to save so that you can have a retirement that in 20 years is the retirement you want? You just might not know it today.
Yeah, it's hard because, I remember growing up, when I was 20 and 30 years old, especially in my 20s, and I wondered if I would ever be at a point in my life where I would be making enough money that I could actually save money. That's the first thing that happens. Is you get your first job and you go, oh my God, I have all of these expenses. I have to pay my rent. I have to pay all these, whatever it is. I want to go out and have a social life. Is there money left over? And all of a sudden you get to this point in your life and you realize, man, I'm actually making enough money so that I can cover my expenses and save. And so when you think about putting money towards the future, you've got to work with people and saying, well, we've got a plan for short term, these emergency funds, and then long term, and give them an incentive to do this long term because they don't really know what it's retirement. I'm not thinking about retirement right now. That it's different.
Absolutely. And so I kind of frame it as buying flexibility for the future. So if you're putting money aside in your 30s and your 40s, you might say, it's not like someone who's saving at age 60 who knows, okay, this money I'm going to take out so that I can go to Florida in the winters. Because you don't know what you're going to do yet. But what it can do is it can buy that flexibility so that in 5 or 10 years, you have you have more opportunities to you. You might be able to say, well, maybe I can cut back at work a little bit. Or maybe we can afford to help our kids go to college. Or maybe that place in Florida that we're going to want in our 60s, maybe we buy it younger. We just had a client who recently did this, and their kids are going off to college. They want to take a look at buying a place in Florida, and we were able to look at the numbers and said, hey, you saved really well throughout your entire life. And you are now at a point where you have the flexibility to be able to do this now, enjoy it now, and have it for the future.
So, I noticed that a lot of our younger clients spend money differently than the way a 60 or 70-year-old client would spend it when they were that age. It's a different world we live in today. And I think our older clients are finding themselves with more money than they ever imagined and not being able to spend money because they were so used to being just so careful with how every dollar that went out. And I think your generation is trying to find a balance of spending money today and also doing it in the future.
Yeah, and I think what people spend money on is very different. Today, younger people are spending money on travel and experiences. 30, 40 years ago, you had to have money set aside to buy a TV. Think about the price of a TV in 1985 versus today. And that was a big investment for your family to buy a physical TV for the living room.
And it was like a 19-inch TV that weighed about 70 pounds.
Right. And they had these big,
Big knobs.
Big knobs.
And you put aluminum foil on the top of the, you don't realize that because you weren't around, but we had to put aluminum foil sticks and kind of hold it.
Oh,
all right,
on the
don't
antennas.
move, don't
Sure.
move. So you could actually watch a TV show. And there were about 5 channels.
Of course. And so you put all that money into that at the time. And now, people who are retired are used to saying, okay, I'm going to spend some of my extra money on physical things, but all of those things have been reduced in price.
Right.
And so it's just a different world.
A TV's disposable these days.
I was going to say, a TV breaks and you go, is it worth having a
don't bring your
repairman
TV
coming
to the
out?
repairman, but nor, even like your laundry machine or
refrigerator,
It's
dishwasher.
Like, just get rid of it and buy something different. The world has changed. The world has changed. But one of the things that I notice in the younger generations today, and we hadn't even talked about this, but it just popped into my head, is people are getting married a little bit later in life. They're not getting married in the early 20s. Many people later 20s, 30s, even 40s right now, having children, whatever it might be. But the bachelor parties and the bachelorette parties, it used to be we would rent a bus and maybe go to a bar or two. And now it's this destination experience for bachelorette parties, isn't it?
It's travel. I mean,
it's a lot of money, not to mention the destination weddings that follow.
That's very true.
And I have a difficult time wrapping my head around all of that, but the world has changed. But I think also what's kind of interesting, it's something that people don't want to talk about these days. And we see it here in our office because, look, we see thousands of people. We've been doing this since 1968. We've seen the way people spend and save money differently over time. The younger generation, the 30s, the 40-year-olds, they're spending money and buying stuff, unlike what the older generation would have bought before, with less worry about how much money will I have in the future, because though they don't want to say this, they know there's an inheritance coming. Because the money that mom and dad are spending or not spending is going to be, in many cases, life-changing to the generation that inherits it. Now, I'm not saying that happens with everybody, but we are seeing that happen a lot in our office. We're not talking about super wealthy people, but you got a client that has a net worth, including their home, of $2, $3, $4 million. If you die and your children each inherit, let's say, an extra $1 million or $2 million, that can be life-changing to them.
It certainly can. But it becomes a problem when people start to rely on that as their retirement plan. We've seen a lot of people who anticipated big inheritances, but that was mostly because mom and dad kept giving them money throughout retirement, and that was them giving them their inheritance little at a time.
Right.
And now they're used to spending that amount of money, and then the inheritance comes in, and it's not quite what they thought it was, and they haven't saved. And so that's another thing we want to make sure we get ahead of with people who we talk to is an inheritance is a bonus. It should not be planned upon.
That's right. But here's the one that's really no one's talking about. I'm not worried about the next generation, because the next generation is going to receive the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of this world. Think about it. All these 401k plans, the value of homes, the value of assets transferring to that next generation. And that next generation that gets that money, they're so used to spending money on nice cars, nice travel experiences, buying another house, going out to eat and buying expensive bottles of wine, and so on and so on and so on. The problem is is, will they be as responsible as the generation was that left them the money, so that their children, that next generation, is as fortunate as they were? And I worry about that generation. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. If now's the time for you to get serious about your financial planning and investment management needs, it's a great time to give our office a call. Yes, we're busy at the end of the year, but we're already building new appointments into the first of the year. So if this is the time for your New Year's resolution, give our office a call. 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or visit us on that thing called the World Wide Web. Our website, Freedman Financial, that's Freedman.
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com. You go to the bottom of any page, you can put in your name, your email address, sign up for our free weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday at 10:30 in the morning. Or if you want to learn a little bit more about our firm, Christian, what are some of the things you can find on the website?
You can find our weekly newsletter, which comes out every Friday. Go to the bottom of any page. You can click the link, sign up, and you'll get that newsletter in your inbox each week, except for the week of Thanksgiving, which was last week. So you've got a full year before that happens.
And then, of course, on the website, you can find bios about us. You can find out how the types of clients we serve, the fees that we charge, because everyone wants to know. No one does this stuff for free, so you can learn a lot about the firm. We encourage you to visit the website again, FreedmanFinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com. That's going to do it for us this week. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you again next week with more dollars and cents financial advice in a language you can understand.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.